to Hindu Women's Festival 2021, hosted by Beyond the Bindi. I'm joined today by two very dear friends, Sunita Mistry-Shah and Meera Shah. We are all joined deep-rooted friendship, motherhood, and most importantly, we're all Shahs. Motherhood, child development, and the joys and the challenges that come with this full-time unpaid role. Doesn't come with a manual, doesn't come, each journey is different and it's unique, but most importantly, there's no right or wrong. So a bit more about ourselves. I'm Heena Shah, and a lot of you know me as Heena Solanki. I'm an event specialist, entrepreneur, and have a passion for technology. I'm a mother to 3 children, 2 who live with me and 1 who's an angel now. My life turned upside down when my princess was born, stillborn. And why did it happen? How did it happen? 10 years on, I'm still questioning that. I forged forward to progress with my family as I was losing everything at that time and I saw my family crumble. My goal is to lead my family and myself to a positive mindset. I'd like to introduce Sunita. Sunita is an author, speech and language therapist specializing in bilingualism. She also just recently won an international award for International Women's Day Organization for Women of Excellence in Education. She waited 8 years for her first child. She has had an incredible journey of self-reflection, spiritually, and belief. The support from her family was unconditional, and without that, she would not have survived this journey. Her goal for her children are to always be happy, healthy, and resilient. We have Meera. Meera is a wife, a mother, dentist turned educator, struggling with endometriosis and infertility, and finally blessed with a child only to be diagnosed with cancer when her son was only 6 months old. She had a relapse in 2018 when her and a stem cell transplant. Rohan was only 8 at that time. The conversation was real and parenting challenges of being honest without scaring him. He is 10 and Meera is on a long-term chemo as an incurable condition. Her goal is to raise him to be balanced and resilient young man. Today, we're going to be exploring how Hindu Dharma has helped us mothers through these difficult and modern day challenges of childbearing. Most of you will know, and not everyone, not all women, but most women, they follow a path where we graduate, get a job, get married, and then the pressure's on. When are you having a baby? These challenges all have their own paths. Everyone has their own stories. I really want to start with Sunita. Can you tell us your journey? 8 years is a long time. So Sunita, over to you.
I know, and I think, to be honest, it's self-denial. There was so much self-denial. I always wanted to have children. I mean, I've worked with thousands of children in my role as a speech and language therapist, and it was never a question to have children or not to have children. I always wanted to have children. I love being with kids and definitely wanted my own. And we'd been married, and the young years, if you're married, you're going out with friends, you're enjoying yourself. It doesn't kind of come into the equation then because you're traveling and just finding yourselves together. And then, we were saying, I think maybe it's about time we start a family. And it was just a kind of unsaid thing. And then each year went by and I was seeing people who got married at the same time as me, starting to have a family and baby showers and news of pregnancies. And we kept trying, and it was, that whole thing is a challenge in itself. And I think people just don't talk about it. Suddenly 1 year turned to 2 years, turned to 3 years. And I kept making up excuses. I'm not ready. I've got to concentrate on my career and my work. And then we got our own house. It was a big house building project. So I think looking back and reflecting, I played this whole game that, I'm not ready for kids yet. And then suddenly kind of 5 years went on, 6 years went on. And it was my best friend, actually, because in the circle of 4 friends that we've got, actually 3 of them had IVF. So one had about 5 failed cycles, another had a successful one. And she said, Neeta, I think you need to go to the doctor and go and get some fertility tests and things like that. And I'm like, oh no, it will just happen when it's supposed to, you know, I don't need those sort of things. And then she was one of those in my life that she'll just tell it how it is and say, you just need to pick yourself up, you need to go, you've got problems here, you want kids, go and get some help. And it was quite a difficult conversation to have, because it's like, right, what do I do? This is not just ABC like the rest of my life has been. This is suddenly a big stumbling point where I can't do this without help. So I remember first going kind of to the IVF clinic, and there were lots of different tests and tried different procedures before. And then we decided to go down the IVF route. And I was lucky because I had like my two best friends that had gone through it. But it was one of those things that people don't talk about. And, you know, you'd kind of dread going to weddings because after 7 years, they kind of look at your stomach when you walk in. You're not having children? Did you not want children? And inside you're just, again, making up excuses. But inside you feel sick when you see that pregnant cousin walk past and someone pushing a pram and stuff and thinking, oh God, when is it going to be me? And then we embarked on the IVF journey, which was, I'd have to say, incredible. I was really lucky with my IVF journey. It's not easy, but I had a really supportive partner and my family. And my friends, and I think a lot of mine, again, I had a lot of acupuncture throughout my whole cycle, and I can't thank Dr. Brumber more than anybody, who just made the whole process so seamless with the egg collection, the injections, and everything was kind of, I got pregnant on my first cycle, so I felt very blessed.
But Sunita, I mean, IVF, I mean, I haven't been through IVF, but I know friends who have, and it's quite intrusive, right?
Yeah, it's quite painful as well, because you have to, there's like 3 stages along this kind of journey that I always kind of see as kind of the milestones of IVF. I think one is just deciding to go through the process anyway. And then you have to put your full commitment on, because the amount of hospital appointments when you start your medication, you've got to constantly have scans with your ovaries. And what was happening with my ovaries is they were kind of making lots and lots of eggs, and I had to kind of be careful there was no kind of rupture in the ovaries. So I had to be checked even more. And I was actually really lucky, because when they collected my eggs, they collected 21 really good eggs. And that procedure was so painful. Like, they put you to sleep and they kind of use injections to take the eggs out. And I woke up and I was in excruciating pain. And then what had happened is, they decided, because I'd got so many eggs, that they'd split the batch. So they do half normal IVF and half what they call ICSI, where they actually inject the sperm into the egg. And I remember it was that one wait, it was 24 hours, and you're waiting for a phone call to see how many of your eggs have fertilized. I don't know what happened with the hospital. It was like 2 o'clock. I remember that morning, I was feeling sick. I was like, on my phone, what have I called? It's all failed. I've gone through all these injections and all this medication and nothing. What's happening? They've got 21 eggs. Nobody's called me. But they phoned my husband's number that he doesn't use at about 10 o'clock. And I literally checked his phone at 2 o'clock. I went, oh, it was successful. You know, they're fertilized. So that was one big kind of point in the journey where you're like, phew, okay, there's something there that possibly we can go to the next step. And then again, it's more medication. And I remember it was actually my mother-in-law and my mom came with me for the egg transfer. And I think it was the most surreal experience, because I decided to go into that room alone to have the eggs transfer. And what had happened is, it was just weird, them kind of opening the Samsung fridge, and you're thinking, I'm going to have a baby if this works out. And it was just seeing, because they x-ray you and you just see a dot. It's like a little dot of rice, and they kind of inject it into you. And I didn't want to stand up, and I was kind of going like this, and the nurse is like, it's not going to fall out, you know, it's going to be okay. You know, we've just got to wait for the 2 weeks. And again, that 2-week wait, you're kind of, they're like, just live your life normally, just be sensible, you know, let it take its course. And I had intensive acupuncture every day for 2 weeks over that. And I'm sure that really did help me. And then 2 weeks, I remember just trembling, picking up that pregnancy test and then finding out I was pregnant. I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was so lucky on my first cycle. And then knowing that we still got 11 eggs kind of frozen that were high quality, I was just overwhelmed. And then my pregnancy journey began.
Did you, I mean, tell me, you know, how was it with the parents? Because did they understand IVF, or did they first think, oh, there's something wrong with you, something wrong with him? How was it?
Do you know what? When it comes to my mum, she's just not your typical, I'd say, kind of stereotypical Asian mother. She's 70. She looks amazing. She does Zumba better than I do. And she's actually a Reiki master and quite spiritual with her crystals and, you know, things like that. So me and my mum have quite cool conversations, to the point recently there was this thing on Netflix, wasn't there, Bombay Begums, which was quite raunchy, and I said, oh yeah, I've been to watch it with my mom, and my friend's like, what, you watch that with your mom? And we've always had a very open relationship, and I think it kind of stemmed back to living in Macclesfield as well, because where we grew up as kids, there wasn't that Asian community to say, oh, your daughter's doing this or she's going here and doing that. And mum brought us up in such a balanced way that, give me a masala dabba, I can cook any Indian food possible. I can put a sari on, I can learn my language. Whereas my granddad used to say, how are you going to bring your kids up? They're going to be Christian, because we went to Catholic schools and stuff. And I think I owe it to my mum. And looking back now, being a mother myself, thinking, gosh, she was harsh, but I thank her for every bit of that harshness because of what she's done for me. And I think because we were so open, and she's always been like my big sister and friend, I can talk to her. She grounded me a lot through the process. She's, look, you're going to have to do this. We're with you. Take it as it comes. And I think more her advice is just take each day by day. Don't keep thinking about what's next, because it will destroy you. And I think that was really valuable advice, because I think you can be your worst enemy, especially when you're thinking of things, what's going to happen. It might not even happen, but that worrying process, I think, can really fill your head, I'll be honest.
And was your mom or mother-in-law quite honest with people that, yes, she's had IVF, or wasn't the kind of...
I think we didn't really tell anyone. It was a more close kind of people, especially during the process. We just didn't say anything. We just kind of got on with it, because I didn't need the questions. I had enough of my own questions to be asking going through it. And then when I did get pregnant, it's like, well, actually, yeah, both our kids were IVF, and I've got nothing to hide, because I would help any woman to discuss how they're feeling, to go through that process, to support them, because my journey was actually quite positive, and what I did to maybe help my pregnancy. So yeah, I think it's kind of, I was very lucky with the support I've got.
Sorry for my ignorance. Is IVF, is it paid, or don't you get one on the government?
Yeah, so I was lucky. I had my first cycle was government paid from the NHS, but because of my second cycle, we had to pay. So we had to pay for the medication and the egg transfer. Then we had to pay for the eggs to be frozen as well. So there was obviously a big financial kind of thing, as well as all the acupuncture as well. But
okay, Meera, I know you've got your story as well on IVF. Do you want to just share a bit of that?
Yeah, so thanks, Heena. Slightly different to Sunita. Mine was more, I struggled with painful periods all my life, actually, for as long as I can remember. And it was a couple of years after I'd been married, and I wasn't even thinking about children at that point. I was still very focused on the career. And a friend of mine had said, she said, I think you need to see my gynecologist, because she said, I'm convinced you've got endometriosis, because she'd had it. And I went to see this gynecologist, and it turned out that actually it was quite severe, had spread to quite a large area, and I needed surgery to help my pain. And it was at that point the consultant sat me down, and he said, I don't know what your plans are for children, but I suggest you get a move on, because you're most fertile time and the easiest time for pregnancy will be quite soon after the surgery, before it starts to come back again. So we sat down and we talked about this, my husband and I, and we thought, okay, let's take this advice on board and let's bring the plans forward, having no idea really of how difficult it was going to get. As it happened, within a few months I did fall pregnant naturally, but sadly that pregnancy was lost in the first trimester. I remember your comments, Sunita, about going to weddings and people asking, and so I'd been married a few years at this point, but I actually went to a wedding a few weeks after that miscarriage, and I just had the surgery because I didn't bleed naturally. And someone actually at that wedding put their hand on my tummy and said, "Oh, is something going on here?" And I just didn't know what to say at that point. I was so emotional as it was from the loss. And gosh, your comment just took me back to that, really. But let's fast forward. After that first loss, it 1, 2, 3 years went by, nothing happening. My endometriosis is starting to return because the pain's starting to come back. By this point, we've been to the GP, been referred to a fertility clinic because, enough time had passed and nothing had happened. Like you, Sunita, we were also referred on the NHS. And at that point, they said, well, before we embark on the IVF route, we actually need more surgery, another laparoscopy to remove any more endometriosis and scarring that had built up, just to make the environment as hospitable as they could. So roll on, next bit of surgery, then I'm ready for IVF. And gosh, I remember that juggling. So I was always juggling my patients and my clinic appointments between the appointment, because until you've had your scan, you don't know whether you've got to go back in 3 days or 4 days or 5 days. And I was working 2 hours away from the clinic. And it was, so I had to have all of my work colleagues on board at that time. But anyway, unfortunately for me, I didn't reach the egg harvest stage. So that IVF cycle failed because I didn't produce any eggs. But as it happened, I had to wait a couple more months, and I had the drugs ready for my next cycle. Didn't need them. By some miracle, I had a natural conception, and it stuck as well. So looking ahead and to what happened afterwards with the cancer, I just think whether that was some divine intervention there to make sure I had a child before that choice was removed later on, who knows?
Yeah. No, IVF is a fascinating journey, stressful at the most, and one day seems like so long just for that result. And I can understand. I can't fully appreciate, but I can understand the stress at that point for both of you. And
well, I don't know about
it's that whole 9 months until you hold that baby. And like my labor was so traumatic with Cyan as well, that you're thinking, God, I've come this far now, and it's just like, just let me hold him, just let him be in my arms.
Absolutely. So it's just so now we've all become pregnant. So I'm going to move on to my story, where so I have an elder daughter who is Simran, and she was 4 at the time, and I was pregnant with Ria, and this is in 2011. So I was, we had a good gap. So I thought, yeah, we can manage and give everything to the kids how I wanted it. I gave up my career and everything just to be with these kids. So 2011, I became pregnant with Ria, and the first one's always like, no, I don't want to know. I don't want to know what it is. And the second one is like, okay, we're going to get organized. So I found out what it was. It was a girl. And throughout the whole pregnancy, it was great. we were fine, we were healthy, and we had such a good time. Simi was looking after me and she was really excited. And because we were having a girl, we had all the clothes from Simran time and, all the toys, everything's sanitized, everything was ready. And I woke up, it was 38 weeks and I woke up in the morning, went to the toilet, everything was fine, baby was moving. Then an hour later, I woke up, went to the toilet, there was blood. So I just thought, okay, it's labor. So then I, woke Nilesh up and I said, okay, I think we need to go. So on the way, it was a fine journey. There was no problem, and I felt the baby move. And I get to Watford General, and you have to go into triage first. They check the baby heart rate and all that. So I get there, and the nurse is there, and she goes, she put the monitor, and she looked at me, and I said, everything okay? And she goes, I'm just coming back. And then she gets another nurse, and I was like, going, okay. And she goes to me, there's no heartbeat. And I said, no, change the monitor. I go, the baby's been moving, change the monitor. So they went and got another monitor. And then they went and got a doctor, and the doctor goes, there's no heartbeat. I go, okay, do an op and get the baby out. They go, we can't do that, that'll be life-threatening. I go, it doesn't matter, I don't care, get the baby out. I go, I can't believe there's no heartbeat. The baby has been moving. And they were preparing the op, and I am not one for pain, honestly. And that baby just came out at full speed, and before I could even shout, scream, anything. And the baby was there, full head, just like Simran, proper big, sleeping. And they took the baby away to see if there was a heartbeat or anything. Then they brought her back in a towel, and they go, there is no heartbeat. I go, look at her, she's sleeping. They go, really sorry, Mrs. Solanki, but she is no more. And I said, well, that baby was moving. And they go, we'd have to check your placenta and everything, but at the moment, this is it. I couldn't get up or anything. I had severe tears. Just couldn't believe it, because I live in England. We have all the facilities, we have all the doctors and the hospitals. And that evening, Simran knew I'd gone to hospital thinking I'm going to come back with a baby. And I left that hospital empty-handed, which felt like I'd just gone for a checkup. Came home, Simi was sleeping, and if anyone knew my kids, they don't get up for anything, they're lazy. And that day, that evening, Simi, don't know what happened to her in the night. She just started walking around on the bed, and she must have felt something. And it was really hard for me to explain to her, Simi, we haven't got a baby. All that time, she was looking after me, giving my feet a massage, talking to the baby, to nothing. And I just had to say to her, the baby's gone to JJ house with Nana, and they're going to be there together because someone needs to look after Nana. And since then, I've had a son, Vedant, and he's now 8 years old. And it's still hard for us because both of them know there was another sister. We both love her dearly, but it's hard to explain. And I did so much research into this, because when you're in that situation with just like IVF, you just research like inside out, right? So I researched into stillborn and everything, and UK at that time was the highest with stillborns, because out of Europe, because Europe do monthly testing, whereas UK only did twice testing in the whole pregnancy of 9 months, right? And I couldn't explain it. And then the results came back from my placenta, and they go, it's a placenta abruption, it happens. You can't digest that, right? It just happens. But Ria's with us, and then this is not talked about. Stillborns aren't talked about; they're forgotten. And going to drop Simi to nursery, we were a really close family in the nursery, and there's about 25, 30 mums. They made me a book, thinking of you, mum book, when they heard what had happened. And I went to drop Simi to the nursery, and just as the door opened, because I was thinking my little daughter's going to go here as well. And I just burst out into tears, and the teacher they didn't know what to say. I mean, anyone wouldn't know what to say, right? And they gave me this book that the parents had made. And out of like 25 ladies, 18 of them had stillborns.
What?
Absolutely staggering. And I'm like thinking, I'm talking to these people, I should be knowing them, but it's not talked about. It's not talked about at all. And the only, even my mom, she's a bit traditional, and for them to understand how did it happen, why did it happen, I had no answers, because the doctors gave me no answers. And it's hard to digest this, but it's really important because there's a lot of women suffering in silence with this. And the only way I got through this was the support of my family and my friends, supporting Simran, supporting Nilesh, supporting me. I had 9 months of insomnia. Sometimes I used to hallucinate that I saw that baby standing at the door. And 9 months, the doctors twice gave me antidepressants and sleeping tablets, and Nilesh was, you're not having them. You're not going to be relying on them. And it was a hard journey when you don't have people you can talk to.
And it's those external signs as well, because you've gone through hell and back with your body, with what you went through and the tears and things, and then it's the signs around you. Because when my second one was born, like, science labor was complicated because he had cord compression. He'd actually just squashed his own umbilical cord. So he had to be an emergency C-section after 8 hours of really painful labor. And with the second one, I'd got gestational diabetes. You don't know about all these things. And he was growing at quite a rate, little one. So they said, oh, because you've just had a C-section for the other one, we'll give you a C-section. Went there, everything fine, 7:30 in the morning, baby was delivered, healthy. And for 24 hours, you've got a catheter, you're lying in bed, nothing's happening. The next morning, I got up to go for a shower and I screamed with agony. It was like someone had literally stabbed me. And I said to the nurse, I've got a really bad pain. And she goes, oh, Mrs. Shah, you just need to walk and go to the toilet. You've had a second C-section. It's natural. Hour by hour, every time I was drinking, moving, I could hardly even nurse Deanne. I was in so much agony. But cut a very long story short, 4 days later, they realised, so the baby was born on the Friday. Monday morning, my mom was like, what is going on with you? You look grey, you look 6 months pregnant again. And I was screaming constantly, on and off, literally screaming in the bed with pain. And they were just saying, you need to actually go to the toilet, you're constipated. And because you've got your scar tissue, this is what's happening. So the guy that did my spinal block for my C-section came back on shift because it was a weekend on Monday. And he says, Mrs. Shah, what are you doing here? And why are you looking like this? I mean, I keep telling them there's something just not right. I don't feel well. To the point I actually said, I want to kill myself because I cannot take this pain. I remember saying to the doctor, you do something or I will take my life because I cannot take this pain. It was such bad pain. They'd cut my bladder by 10 centimeters. And that evening, I literally had to have emergency surgery there was about 9 people in theatre because the bowels team, the kidney team, the gynae, the liver team, everybody, because they had to check all my organs because of kind of sepsis. And it was the most horrific thing because suddenly it's like, I've got a baby, can't do anything with this baby. Mom, I need to go to surgery. You're going to have to take this baby. And my husband and mum just left with this baby after I'd come out of surgery. They'd come out halfway between surgery saying to my mum, we need to cut her like this to get all her organs out to kind of fix that. So I was in intensive care and he got taken. I didn't see him for the first 12 days of his life. He got taken and I was in bed so poorly. And it was like recently when I was packing to move, it's seeing that baby grow, going, I never saw you wear that. And my mum's like, oh, he with, and then she'll catch herself because they were having to cup feed him and I couldn't breastfeed him. And I breastfed my first one until he was 2. And yet I was so sick on all this medication and pethidine and everything, I'd still pump my milk and throw it, not to give it to him. And it was the most horrific thing in the world because I don't know if I would, it was my second chance. I was hours away from not being here today of what happened. And it's seeing going into mother care and seeing newborn baby things, knowing you can't have another kid again. And it's that whole post-traumatic stress that you suffer silently with because it happens at night time when you go to sleep. You see Call the Midwife on TV and you're like, isn't it, Heena? It's those things that can really get you.
Absolutely. And you've taken us nicely onto Meera. You know, we've had our baby, we've got pregnant, we've delivered a healthy baby, but now Meera, tell us what happened with you.
Well, it actually started really before baby was born. I had relatively easy first and second trimester, some nausea, but I carried on working. I was quite fit and active, as I'd always been, and I was just in seventh heaven really, because once I got past the 12-week point, I thought, wow, we're up and running now, we're safe. My team were brilliant actually, because of another condition. I did have monthly scanning, which is why I was so shocked when you said to me that there's just so little monitoring. Life was great. And then I got to third trimester and I just had excruciating upper body pain, chest pain, rib pain, and back pain. Lifting became difficult, sleeping was difficult. So the bigger I got, I ended up having to sleep upright for the third trimester because if I lay down, breathing was difficult. And so I think I ended up finishing work at 34 weeks because of the pain and then being able to treat patients it was harder and harder. But all the way through, obviously there's no x-rays. You can't have x-rays because you're pregnant. You can't have pain relief other than paracetamol. I was offered physiotherapy. I was told that it was, I'm quite short, being short-waisted, and I had a big baby. It's just things moving out of the way, ribs being squashed. And you accept it because you don't know otherwise. It was my first pregnancy. I didn't know what it was meant to be like. I also had a bit of a long labour and Ron was in distress, so I ended up having an emergency section as well. And I just remember afterwards, for months, coming home and then being in so much pain. I had a lot of upper body pain, shoulders, chest. Continued seeing the physiotherapist and was told, well, everything's settling back again. That's what. And again, I didn't know otherwise. I found breastfeeding really difficult because I found it really difficult to lift him because I was in upper body pain. So I could only feed at home with 2 or 3 pillows supporting him, restricted my first few months of maternity. I couldn't go out without help because I couldn't lift the car seat. I didn't have enough strength and I had pain. And I thought, this isn't right. I then went to see another friend, a very good friend who's a physiotherapist, and he said to me, Meera, you need to go back to the GP. There's something not right here. You need to push this further. I had everything. I had blood tests and my GP said, everything's normal. It's fine. It will settle down. And then I said, no, I'm not leaving now without a referral. I need to see somebody. So that's when, again, I had to go around the houses to get a diagnosis because nobody could explain the source of the pain. So I went from rheumatology to orthopedics, and then finally, after the scans and a biopsy of my sternum, we discovered a bone marrow cancer in my sternum. So then finally I was in with haematology. So Rohan just turned 6 months at that point. And I cannot tell you the relief to know that that pain wasn't in my head, and that I finally had an answer for feeling the way I did. And knowing that it wasn't me, you know, it wasn't something that I'd done. This was a real condition. But then, gosh, once you have a cancer diagnosis, everything kicks into action, and it's, you know, this appointment, that appointment, let's stage the disease, decide on the treatment plan. So roll on, he's 7 months old, I do my last breastfeed, and then I start taking my drugs. And then I start radiotherapy treatment. I'm in hospital 5 days a week for a few weeks. So it's the quick scrabble to get help with childcare. You know, my husband couldn't have all of that time off while I was at the hospital every day. And I just remember those few weeks, a bit of a whirlwind, blur of going to the hospital in the day, making baby food at night because he's weaning. And just thank God for our community and our family support network in that time. The hospital had actually said to me, please don't put him into nursery because we don't know whether we're going to do further treatment that might affect your immune system. So we need to keep him at home so that you don't get the bugs. So that's when we had to draft in family members, and so lucky to be part of, you know, a big family on both sides who everybody could just help. But I just remember things that we did were, I guess you would call a Western way, but we had Rohan in a routine quite early on, a feeding and sleeping routine, which I guess within the community and family, it was at odds with that, because it's not the Indian way to have your child in a routine. But then when we had all the different people looking after Rohan, we just put a whiteboard in the kitchen with rough timings and said, if he's screaming at this time, he needs food. If it's at this time, he needs sleep, or whatever. And then the feedback we had afterwards was, thank God he was in a routine. And it really helped that he wasn't distressed. And the family members who were caring for him. But let's fast forward a few more years. Because I was always, well, the reason I didn't have any more children was because I always knew that I had a 50% chance of progressing to an incurable condition. And they had said to me that if I was to get pregnant again, that chance may happen sooner, really, because pregnancy can suppress your immune system. It could trigger a relapse sooner. So it was really difficult to think head over heart, because I'd always wanted more children. But then on the flip side, you think, if I take that risk and it speeds up a relapse, then does it speed up the beginning of the end? And then are there children left motherless? And these are all the thoughts that you have. So it was very easy for me at that point, whilst emotional, to actually just say no. I won't have any more.
How was it telling Rohan what age did you tell Rohan about?
So because he was a baby, he didn't really know that I had any treatment. We noticed changes in him. The minute I finished my treatment, he became very clingy. Separation anxiety set in, and that didn't really improve until he went to school. And he was always aware that mummy had weak bones. Following my radiotherapy to the sternum, I kept fracturing the sternum repeatedly. So I had to be really careful. And there was a lot of things that mummy couldn't do. I couldn't lift him very well, and I had to have help a lot. But he didn't really know why. And there was never really the opportunity to tell him. Because although it was never a secret, I was heavily involved in cancer support for young people, and he would often come to the events, but he just never put 2 and 2 together. But it was when he was 8, I had my relapse. And at that point, we knew that the treatment plan was going to be chemotherapy and then a stem cell transplant, which would involve a separation because I would have to be in isolation in hospital for a few weeks, and then a long process of recovery after that. So at that point, we had to sit him down and in an age-appropriate way, brace him. And we chose to do it in stages, really. So we talked about, mummy being ill, he didn't really understand what cancer was. So, bad cells that aren't working very well, and I'm going to have medication. We didn't tell him about the transplant until later because it was due to be 6 months later, which in a child's life, that's half a school year.
Yeah.
So we knew that by that point, he'd be, 6 months older. So it's been gradual, age-appropriate drip feeding of information. But then, of course, we did have to rewind and tell him that, mummy's had this before. And we used it as a positive example to say, yes, I had treatment 8 years ago, and it worked. So, we've got to believe that this treatment's going to work as well. All the evidence points to the fact that it will work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But again, with my science hat on, I could be a bit clinical with him as well and teach him some cell biology.
Oh gosh. So, we all have stories, right? Some happy ones, some sad ones, some things that we can't change, right? And we have to go forward. And I just want to touch upon a point about Hindu Dharma. How has it helped us? Because, I was at all odds and I was really baffled. I was lost, honestly. And I'm quite strong-headed, you have life instances and I just keep going forward. You stumble and you get up. But when Ria passed away, it really knocked me and thinking, why? How can this even happen? And then, Meera Shah was explaining that maybe you were just a vehicle for her to be somewhere else. And that was only the time spent. She was needed somewhere else more. And it's really hard to digest that. But then if she didn't move on, then I wouldn't have had my son. So I am grateful to her that, I can't look back thinking now, why did it happen? I have to look forward saying, thank you for making space for your brother. That's the only positive way I can look at this. How has it spiritually, how has it helped you guys, or what have you done? Have you done things like, something, one thing was to me that when I was pregnant, right, in all these 3 pregnancies, I was always told when someone's pregnant, you don't go to the other person's koro, the baby shower thing. And I'm like going, why? Because she's my friend or she's my cousin. Why wouldn't I? And they go, no, you shouldn't. That means it's really heavy. And I'm like going, yeah, I know the baby's heavy, but I don't understand the logic, right? And or if someone, in one of the pregnancies, my mommy passed away. Me and my cousins were both pregnant at the same time. Now it's my cousin's mom, and I was really close to my mommy, right? And they go, you can't go to the funeral. We go, why? And they go, a pregnant woman shouldn't go to a funeral. And now I'm thinking back, maybe I shouldn't have gone, or should have gone. Was it connected? So, there are some of our cultures, rituals, and things that are beliefs that should we have done, maybe we should have thought about, or, have there been any instances? Sunita, let's start with you.
I mean, to be honest, I find this a very interesting subject. And like I said, I'm learning a lot through my books with the JJs about kind of the scientific reasons versus the spiritual reasons versus the old wives' tales versus religion. And I think they all get put into this mixing pot, don't they? Don't wash your hair when you're pregnant. So my mother-in-law's family are like, oh, you shouldn't wash your hair if you're pregnant. And I was like, well. And then reading, Googling it. Well, where did they all live ancestors years ago in the village? Where did they wash their hair? In the river. The journey down to the river was rocky. Women would fall and miscarry. So they don't wash their hair because it would risk them getting injured. So that was kind of one take on it. And I think with all this, it's so individual, because I really believe in kind of the Matajis and the Hindu goddesses and kind of the Shakti within women that way. And it got to the point, my mum goes, well, why don't you go and see the Mataji, you know, get some blessings and belief. And it was ironic, and there's two counts here. 21, she said, told me to do 21 Tuesdays fasting, which I did. And it was one of those, I wasn't at the JJ's. JJ's wasn't even born at that time. That came after my son kind of started to become more inquisitive about the JJ's. And so I wasn't on that spiritual journey of even picking a Puranas up a Rig Veda. I was trying to kind of comprehend what I'm doing. I just did it. No questions asked. It was just did it. And ironically, my last Tuesday fast, the Tuesday after I fell pregnant. So coincidence, spirituality, I don't question it. I'm just thankful it happened, to be honest. And for my belief with the goddesses, the grace of that for me gave me that power. And I think with me, I've been grown up with my mum, who's very spiritual, and she is very much into energies. And that's how we take a lot of the things about what we do as a household. Like the other day, I was feeling really ruffled, and I always get very funny during full moons. And my mum was like that as a child. When there was a full moon, she'd get really bad temperature. And I can tell when there's a full moon, and I'll be like, Mum, is there a full moon today? She goes, yeah. I said, I can tell. And we're so tuned to our kind of energies, me and Mum together. So I think with me, it's kind of a camp of both halves. I think there's never a right or wrong. I think that, like I said, the mixing pot of old wives' tales, religion, and that is so hard to kind of unravel that ball to really find the true answer. And I think more than anything, where I come from is just respect that individual, because, and then I've seen it in my practice as a speech and language therapist. I've seen Sri Lankan families who child is autistic, and suddenly you've got 10 professionals working with this child. You've got an occupational therapist, a physio, a pediatrician, parent portage, and they withdraw. They don't know what to do. And they've going, right, we're going to go to Sri Lanka. We're going to light a candle. We're going to change the girl's name, and everything's going to be okay. Now, as a professional, I know that's not going to eradicate the autism. But I always kind of explain it to the parents that if you broke your leg, you're going to need a splint. But it's your strength that's going to help you heal within. And it's amazing to see once these families have gone there, it's like a switch that clicks with their own inner belief system that they can support this child, that understand this child's got a problem. And it's how they kind of mentally change had such an impact on the kids, because the parents are in a different space now. It's not just because they've lit the candle or changed the name, but that whole process has brought so much to that family to now go on to this next journey in supporting their child with special needs. So yeah, I'm very non-judgmental on that. I think whatever works for you, and if it's gonna get you through, then do it. I'm very much like that.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think in my younger days, I was quite anti everything. Why are you telling me to do this? Why do I have to? I need a reason. Maybe it's me wanting a scientific explanation for everything. And then, I did start to, when I was pregnant, that's when I looked into, why do we eat bak, the katlu?
Oh yeah.
After the baby's born, why do the mothers say that you should have hot meals? And my mother-in-law Heena knows this, that she's a wonderful cook, and she insisted that she's coming to stay and she's going to cook for me. And I'd read into it all, and I thought, well, firstly, here's somebody who wants to come and care for me and the family and give us freshly cooked food, 3 times a day. Why would I not appreciate that, just on a human level? But also then when you look into the ingredients of that katlu and the bak that every single ingredient has a purpose, to increase lactation, to help healing, to build collagen, to reduce pain, to help the contraction of the uterus, to clear the leftover blood and all of that. So, and luckily for me, I really love it. Even when I'm not pregnant, I love eating it. When I'm not had a baby, someone else has a baby, I go and eat their bug.
Yeah.
So, and I, considering now, knowing that I was so ill at the time, I'm pretty sure that all of that nourishment kept me as well as I was. And, when I said to my consultant at diagnosis, I said, how, they think I'd had the tumor for 3 years before, by the time it was picked up.
Oh, wow.
And I said, how have I managed to stay so well then? And they said, it's obviously just the way you're living your life, exercise, food, nutrition, that managed to mask it for so long. And I still managed to continue breastfeeding for the 7 months that I could. And I'm sure it especially in those early, and after a C-section, I think all 3 of us have had one.
Yes.
It's not easy. You can't do everything by yourself. So that family support that we have in our culture, we're so lucky for that. But also, I think later on from the cancer front, I've found that being at peace with my diagnosis and my future and cycles of treatment, I've had to find peace with it to be able to live, because it has to live alongside my life, but I've still got to raise a child through it, and the spirituality that comes, and the yogic practices of mindfulness, and living a slower pace of life on a practical level. I found that's really helped.
No, that's really good. I mean, and you're right. We do recover quicker from C-sections and pregnancies than the Western communities. So I mean, it's really good. But just to tie all this up together in Sunita, is there anything, there'll be many people on your journey in IVF. Is there any key points that you want to share with us? And Meera, I'll come to you as well on the cancer side. Unfortunately, where children and kids and mums or the dads are, diagnosed with cancer. So, Sunita, is there anything on IVF initially?
I think more than anything is be true to yourself and know that it's not going to be an easy journey, and I think, you talk about the woman within the IVF as well, but the partner just needs just as much support. Yes, they might be putting the injections in you. My husband was very supportive, but he had to wait, is she pregnant? Is she that? And I think when you go on this journey is always communicate with your partner, because it's not just about you. They're going through exactly the same journey as you. And don't foresee everything. Just take each day step by step with what you're doing, and I'm such a big believer in positivity. Bring the good vibes in, get your energy vibrations up. If you're praying, if you're chanting, keep in a zone that kind of keeps you as calm and peaceful as possible. And I'm a big believer in kind of manifestation and manifesting what you want through visuals and boards and things like that. So, it is a journey. Stay true to yourself. And you'll have days that you just want to kick and scream and cry in the corner. I did it. I've done it all. But you know what? Every kind of cloud has it's very cliche, silver lining. And I think it's finding that inner strength, that inner Shakti within you to know, right, you know what? This is what my path is. I will accept it and I will take it step by step.
Awesome. Thank you. Meera?
Well, I'm naturally a positive person, so I think that helps. But I have got my down days. You know, there are days where the drugs make me exhausted, and there's days that I can't be a mother. So, you know, my husband has to be mummy and papa at times. So I guess it's just being aware that we all need support. So to reach out for help where when you need it, whether it's friends, family, professional help. Talk about things. I'm a big talker, so, and my story is open. You know, I'm not everyone knows my story, and I find for me it's very cathartic talking about it, and hope that, you know, my story could help others. Some people don't like to talk, but, you know, it might help to talk in some capacity. But also, again, yeah, as Sunita said, to be true to yourself. So if you need a break from things, it's okay to have a break. It's okay to, you know, to remove yourself from negativity if that's what you need at times. You know, there are times where we need to cocoon together as a family to protect ourselves, because the challenges that you're facing for those few weeks can be really difficult, and you don't have that extra energy and capacity for the rest of the world. And then there's other times where we need that support from family and the wider community. And I like to think that we do reach out when we need it, but also I think we need to be mindful of others and whatever challenges they have in life. I think everybody has some challenge. It doesn't have to be ill health. So yeah, I think, yeah, be true to yourself. I communicate, that helps me.
Yeah.
But find something that works for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, so for me, for people in my situation who've lost a child either through pregnancy or post-pregnancy, I feel that they need to just be given that time to reflect, and have a positive mindset. Yes, it has happened, and yes, it is bad. But if you keep dwelling on that same thing, it's really going to eat you up. Really going to eat you up. It's going to absolutely break your family. And that's what was happening. You know, I had a 4-year-old, had a husband, and I was just absorbed in myself. Why? And I think I'm just glad I broke out of it, and we progressed as a family, and talk. You're not the only one that's had IVF. You're not the only one that's had cancer. You're not the only one that's had a stillborn. It's really good to share these topics. It's really important that you talk to someone, because it could help someone. Everyone is not as strong, and don't know which way to navigate, right?
I just don't understand in this day and age with where we are, why there's still so much kind of taboo. And it's like, we're not judging, you know, we as kind of women together want to help people through what they do, because certain things that you might have gone through with you as well, Heena, could just that little spark of something make that other person's journey 10 times easier. And I see it with certain people. I know there's a couple of people I know that have had IVF, but they deny it, because what they've told me about the journey, you wouldn't know that about IVF unless you've gone through it. But why hide it? Like, why are you going to be judged? You know, why is it still there that it can be taboo? Or, you know, people don't talk about how we've had such a kind of open conversation today. I'm not shy to say it. I'm, you know, with me, like we kind of make jokes of it sometimes, that we were saying yesterday, because Sian was my first child, who was the fresh cycle, and we call our little one Frosty. And we were like, we lived in a fridge for 4 years, and he's like, that, mommy, because they were doing the whole, where did we come from and my Samsung fridge, you know. So, and we make it quite light-hearted now, because that was the journey. That's how my kids came about. There's no stalking this kids, and I'm not going to tell you about the birds and bees. You actually came from a fridge, you know. So, and I want to be open with my kids, and I want my boys to be that rounded, that they understand these concepts when they have their partners and when they move on in life, that they shouldn't be sheltered from things, because the things I'm teaching my boys, I don't differentiate if they're boys or girls. You know, they're cooking, they're gardening, they play their Fortnite and stuff, you know, they're balanced. And I think you said that, didn't you, Meera, as how important it is to have that balance. And I think that just sums it up.
Yeah, it's so important, because Rohan asked me, he said, Mummy, why don't I have siblings? And, you know, I've explained to him that actually it took a really long time for you to come along. And then when you did, the cancer came along at the same time. And unfortunately, although we would have planned things differently given a chance, it didn't happen that way. You know, and you still remind him that he's so special, you know, for coming into my life in that order as well, because who knows what would have happened otherwise. But he's very aware that it's not that easy to have children. And he's very aware that, you know, everyone's family makeup is different. You know, no children, one child, multiple children. Mums, you know, unfortunately, he is exposed to other families with cancer because of support groups that we're part of. So in his world, it's normal to have a sick mum as well. But I hope at the end of it all, he is resilient and therefore grows up to be a sensitive young man that will be able to support, you know, somebody else in that situation. You know, hopefully it doesn't arise, but, you know, he can offer that, I guess, perspective.
No, absolutely.
I think you're so right there, because of the journey that I went on with my IVF. I've got a friend who's now 45, and I was telling her, look, dude, as soon as you're 40, those egg quality just switches. I said, I don't know what happens in that biological clock. It is a switch. I said, I started my IVF when I was 35, 36, and my eggs were kind of pretty good quality. And so obviously when I was having my IVF, I was talking to her about it, and she went, dude, I'm going to be 40. She goes, I think I'm going to freeze my eggs. So she made the decision off the fact of what I told her. She hadn't got a partner. She wants kids. She knows that by 40, your egg quality suddenly just diminishes. And it kind of supported her in a way, because now she's got these really fresh eggs in a freezer that if she ever wanted to have children and it didn't happen naturally, she's got her B plan. So part of me was like, if we didn't talk about it, other women wouldn't know that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely.
And, you know, thank you, Heena, for highlighting, you know, the baby loss, because that's, I guess, even less spoken about than infertility.
Absolutely. But no.
You know, none of us would have wanted these journeys by choice.
And the incidence of it, I think I'm very shocked about what you've said about the incidence of stillborn. And I knew it from my mum, because she'd had 2 miscarriages, I think, 2 or 1. But it's just not spoken about. And even how much in you think in England with the healthcare system we've got, that the prevalence is so high.
Absolutely. But you know what, these live incidences have made us all stronger.
Absolutely.
And
at the end of the day, our purpose is still the same. We've got to raise children.
Absolutely. Exactly.
We've still got to get up every day and be mothers.
Regardless of all the roles that I have, it's the best one in the world. I'd be lost without mine too.
But ladies, Sunita, Meera, thank you so much for coming on this session. It's a very sensitive one, but it was very much needed. So thank you, and thank you for joining in to the Hindu Women's Festival for 2021. And I'm sure we'll catch up after this.